This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. On this Monday's program, we begin with a cattle market update from Oklahoma State University livestock economist Derrell Peel. He shares insight on the steady markets in the last week, the potential impacts of further rising interest rates, and the latest cold storage report. We're also joined today by Mikey Hughes. She serves as the coordinator of recruitment and events in K-State's College of Agriculture. And today she shares everything you need to know about K-State's open house, which is taking place on April 1st. We end today's show with this week's wildlife segment, where K-State wildlife specialist Drew Ricketts discusses mountain lions in Kansas and their unique history in our state. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are joined now by Derrell Peel. He is a livestock economist out of Oklahoma State University, joining us for this week's cattle market update. So before we get into things, thanks so much, Derrell, for joining us today.
Yeah, you bet. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Always great to have you. And let's start, as we always have, with our kind of cash and future markets. Things are seemingly holding somewhat steady, right?
Yeah, we've kind of taken a little bit of a pause. Of course, futures markets have been under some pressure lately, and that has actually kind of paused cash markets. At least feeder cattle markets were steady to maybe just a tick lower, depending a little bit on what weight category you looked at. Fed cattle markets seemed like they were a little softer earlier last week, but sort of ended the week, I think, fully steady with the week before. So just kind of taking a little breather here, I think, in some sense.
Sure. And some reactionary, measures, like you mentioned a little bit briefly there, in terms of the macroeconomic landscape we're currently seeing in the U.S.
Yeah, we've had a lot of issues in general for several months. We've been talking about inflation, all the pressures there, and then obviously the Fed's been raising interest rates, and that has impacts directly on producers. It has impacts on exchange rates and consumers. But then, of course, recently then we've had this banking issue, right, where we've had some banks fail. That's added additional jitters to the macroeconomic sector and kind of raised the fears of a recession even higher. And so, there's a lot of sort of risk response to that. It's not that it's happened yet. It's not even clear that it's necessarily going to happen, in my view. But certainly the market is reacting with a cautious risk kind of an approach to that. And that's given cattle markets a little bit of a pause in the last week or so.
Sure, which, is a safe measure to take, which I think makes sense when we look in hindsight. Historically, we've kind of seen this film play out before in some ways, but like you said, maybe not to the same extent to which we've seen this happen before.
Yeah, there's all of that kind of level. I mean, from a beef industry standpoint specifically, it's really more about the demand side, I think, in terms of what it might do to consumer demand. And we've been watching demand for many months now with a caution, and an eye towards what could happen. I've been describing beef demand for quite a while as sort of a so far so good scenario where it's still been quite strong and continues to be, and yet there's lots of things out there that could impact it. So we continue to keep an eye on that going forward. From the standpoint of the cattle markets more broadly, none of this stuff really changes the fundamentals that we've been talking about. So from a supply standpoint, we're still talking about tightening supplies and lots of support in the market in general from that standpoint. But it's in this broader context of a lot of risk and uncertainty right now.
Sure, absolutely. But we were talking beforehand, and I mentioned that I sort of felt like Chicken Little for a little while. Like, the sky's falling, but no one else was seeing it yet. But now we're at the point now where we are seeing beef production fall. So what does that currently look like in our markets?
Yeah, we talked for months last year kind of expecting things to turn, and it was a question of kind of when we turn the corner and when we get all sectors of the industry on the same page. I mean, feeder cattle markets have been going up really for a couple of years, right? Generally building towards tighter supplies and that sort of thing. But it really was the feedlots were the last sector to get kind of on board with that. And we had to play out the drought, changed the timing of feeder cattle last year. But I say all that to say that we finally did turn the corner late in 2022. And certainly as we go into this year, feedlot inventories are falling. Supply tightness now is really becoming a reality. Cattle slaughter is beginning to fall. Beef production is beginning to fall. All those things that we knew were going to happen are in fact happening now. And so, we don't have to worry about sort of when it's going to happen. Now it's going to be a question of sort of riding this wave out now as we go forward.
Some of the market aspects that we should be following maybe more closely if a producer keeps up with these things on a daily basis. What are some of those key things that you would suggest they look out for?
Well, again, individually, of course, producers are dealing with their own personal situation from a standpoint of production and, depending on where you are, whether or not you're still dealing with drought issues and all of those things. But broadly speaking in the market, again, we're going to watch kind of how fast these tighter supplies play out. And that really is part of a drought story yet. We're not out of the drought in some sense of the word, certainly not in some areas. And so although the weather forecasts, everything I read, I'm not a meteorologist, but I listen to them, and there seems to be a growing consensus that we're going to see conditions generally improve through this year. And so there's beginning to be more optimism on the part of producers that we have some better production environment, if you will. And so we're really watching this market situation and sort of see how the timing plays out going forward. So I think you just want to stay tuned now to kind of what happens to beef production. And then, of course, this macro situation, we also have to monitor that from the standpoint of what does that do to both domestic beef demand as well as international beef demand.
Absolutely. Yeah, that macroeconomic aspect, a huge key portion of what we're seeing right now, like we talked about before. And I thought we could end with maybe some specific report information. Recently, a cold storage report came out. And, this isn't something we talk about often on the show, but I figured it'd be interesting to cover today, last year compared to what we're seeing this year, the sort of trends.
Yeah, you bet. We get a cold storage report every month, and this is a measure of beef stocks that are in long-term cold storage. Long-term in this case is 30 days or more. So it's not short-term pipeline kind of flows. It's intended to represent, longer-term stores of beef. And it gets talked about by traders every month, but fundamentally in the cattle market, it's not really that big a deal. The amount of beef in cold storage at any one point in time is about equal to 1 week's worth of production. So even if it all came out at once, it would be a very short-term shock in the market. And of course, by definition, it doesn't all come out at once. It's long-term storage, so it rolls in and out. But all of that said, last year was kind of unusual. Beef cold storage usually drops pretty significantly in the first half of the year into the summer, and then it builds up in the second half of the year. And that's because a lot of those cold storage stocks are made out of the trimmings, the lean beef from our cull cow slaughter, and that's usually seasonally higher in the fall. Plus, grilling demand goes down, hamburger demand goes down a bit in the winter. So we sit on those cold storage stocks. They build up in the wintertime, and then we pull them back out in the spring of the year. And so this latest report shows that, yes, beef cold storage stocks from last month are down. From last year, they're down. Last year, we had such high cow slaughter through the year that we maintained fairly large cold storage stocks all summer. We didn't see the seasonal drop that we normally do. And we are seeing it now. And of course, with beef production generally falling, I think we'll certainly draw these stocks down seasonally and perhaps even more than seasonally in some sense, because the supplies are going to get tighter and tighter as we go forward. So, at the margin, it's a little bit of an indicator of how decisions are being made in the industry, but it's not a major market mover, at least from a broader fundamental sense.
Sure. Are there any consumer concerns when it comes to that storage maybe depleting a little bit lower than we normally would anticipate seeing?
Well, again, recognizing that now there's several things that go into cold storage. So it can be staging beef exports, which get frozen before they're shipped. It can also be beef imports coming into the country, which come in frozen and they sit in cold storage until they get used. But then the other part of it tends to be this lean beef, this cow beef trimmings market. And, the fact that we're going to pull those down this year is just part of this broader supply tightness. So if you go look at the 90s market, the 90% lean trimming market, that cow beef market, it's going up. Cull cow prices are going up, and they're going to continue to go up. We're liable to see a fairly significant drop in beef cow slaughter this year, perhaps as much as 20% or more on a year-over-year basis. So the consumer impact is that hamburger is going to get more expensive as we go forward, and supplies are going to be tight, and that's going to be part of a general trend across all beef products, but perhaps even more so in the ground beef market.
Sure. And I guess depending on the way that you look at prices for consumers, it could be a good thing or a bad thing, the time at which this is happening, because grilling season's right around the corner, right? So that means demand's going to go up.
That's right. The increase we've seen in the 90s market, and I calculate I call it a reference ground beef price. So if you take 5 pounds of 90s and 1 pound of 50% lean trimming that comes from our fed cattle, that's equivalent to about an 83% lean ground beef product. And so I calculate that every week and look at how that price series is going. It's kind of an indicator of the broader ground beef market. And that price has increased over 11% from the first of the year to the most recent weekly data. So it's already going up, and I think that's supply driven, and that will continue to be a major force. We haven't even really gotten into the demand part of this, because we're really probably 3 weeks or so, 3 weeks to a month ahead of the wholesale demand for products from a grilling standpoint. The bottom line is that when both supply and demand kick in here, we're going to see, I think, a lot of a tendency for this market to move even higher.
Yeah, 11% price increase, and I'm sure that's still to climb as we go into the spring and summer months. So we'll keep an eye out on that. I'm sure we'll talk about it here in the show soon as the weeks go on. So we'll talk about that in the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We're going to continue to watch these cull cow prices. We got cull cow prices up around $1 a pound already, and I think they're just going to go higher. So we're going to see some very strong prices that will be behind these hamburger prices for the rest of the year.
Sure. So we might be sitting in somewhat of the calm before the storm, so to speak, here.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Derrell, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Always fun conversations when we have you on the show. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Anytime.
Absolutely. Once again, everyone, that was Derrell Peel. He is the livestock economist out of Oklahoma State University, joining us for this week's cattle market update. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned back into Agriculture Today, and we're joined now by Coordinator of Recruitment and Events at Kansas State University in the College of Agriculture, Mikey Hughes. So, Mikey, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And you're here in studio today specifically because we have an upcoming event that is the talk of the town, really. It's the K-State Open House.
Yeah, definitely an important event for K-State, kind of our way to show off what we do at the university.
Yeah, and you were telling me beforehand that, we're approaching nearly 90 years of this event, and it's probably one of the largest K-State community events that's not athletics focused.
Yeah, I certainly think so. Everybody knows K-State because of the Wildcats. I mean, especially this year. It's hard being a football and a basketball school, but here we are. And I will say, I think that people understand the university and understand athletics, but the Kansas State University Open House is really our opportunity to show off what we do in academics and research. So I think it's just a neat way for people to get to know K-State a little bit more.
Absolutely. And it's fair to say the College of Ag really shines during this event. I've spoken to numerous students during my time here at K-State, and they always highlight how much they enjoyed this event before they even came to K-State.
Yeah, I will certainly say I think we do a pretty good job, and it's largely because our departments take a lot of pride in the opportunities they provide during open house. It's just a good way for them to show off the hands-on learning our students get every single day.
Absolutely. And this event is taking place April 1st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it's open really to everyone. So all ages, all categories, everyone's welcome to attend.
Yeah, a little bit of everybody comes to open house. So when you come to K-State Open House, please feel free to bring the whole family, the dog, all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk through some of the amazing events that are going to be going on this year. Starting really at the Union, there's going to be a booth for recruitment specifically. So if students are coming that are interested in attending K-State, this would be the place to come.
Yeah, so I always recommend starting at the Union first for open house. When you start at the Union, make sure you stop and get your open house passport. When you complete the passport, you get a prize. So very worth it. And that's kind of how you make sure that you're checking all the boxes and visiting a variety of locations during open house. The union, specifically for the College of Agriculture, will have a booth there to talk about recruitment and students who maybe want to come study at K-State. So if you have any questions about the College of Ag and what we do, that's definitely a great place to check out.
And I understand there's going to be an event later on in the day, too, at around 11 a.m. in Waters, specifically for those students as well, if they're looking to learn more.
Yeah, so if you want to know more, have a bit more in-depth conversation, I think we're hoping to do a student panel, actually have some real K-State College of Ag students present. I definitely recommend coming to that event at 11 in Waters. Just make sure that you get to actually meet with everybody and learn a bit more about scholarships, that kind of thing.
And who better to learn about the K-State experience than a K-State student themselves?
Yeah, exactly. They do our best job of talking to people and just kind of representing the university.
Some pretty amazing students here at K-State, and they're going to be on display really across all of the events that are going to be taking place this day. Starting at Waters Hall, there's going to be every single club really in the College of Ag there showing off what they do.
Yeah, so coming out to Waters Lawn is where you find the College of Agriculture Hub. Every club, just like you said, Samantha, is going to be present. There's a huge variety of things you can do on Waters Lawn. Come get your airbrush tattoos from the Ag Ambassadors, learn how to rope from the rodeo team, all that kind of stuff. It's really fun to go out to Waters Lawn. So I recommend starting there in your College of Ag journey.
Absolutely, and it even extends into Waters. I understand the Entomology Club is going to be there doing some fun, creepy, crawly things.
Yeah, so the Entomology Club and the whole entomology department, they do a really great job of displaying what they do with insects and people and how that all intertwines and how we're all interconnected. I definitely recommend picking up that millipede at the insect petting zoo. Feels a bit wild. Also, getting your photo taken during the creature feature portion is a really awesome thing to do. And I didn't mention, but in the Waters Lawn, we also offer the scavenger hunt for the College of Agriculture. So the Agricultural Education Club plans it every single year, and that's your opportunity to dive a bit more into the College of Ag. Very similar to the Passport, a bunch of clubs are represented, and if you complete the scavenger hunt, you actually get a t-shirt for open house.
Wow, all the prizes available at this event then.
All the prizes, all the food.
Excellent. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, I'm sure, with our friends at Bakery Science and Milling. They're going to be in Schellenberger.
Stopping by Schellenberger Hall, always recommended. One of the most important things. Last year, they had purple sourdough bread for sale at the bake sale, so highly recommend checking that out. It was really neat to see how they actually produce that purple bread. On top of that, they also offer a couple hands-on demonstrations, so you can learn how to make your own pretzel, you can make your own dog treats that you can bring home to Fido, or you can get your hands dirty with Milling 101, where you actually get to learn how we take wheat and process that into flour.
Very cool. Very hands-on experiences there in Schellenberger then. And then in Throckmorton, I understand this is a competition that takes place every single year. It's Willie and the Beanstalk, and it's a fun soybean growing competition.
Yeah, so that one's a great way to show off the agronomy department and what they do. Willie and the Beanstalk is super cool. All different kinds of ag classes all over the state of Kansas get to compete and grow their own soybeans that they then display during the Willie and the Beanstalk competition. So you can go check out that judging, see the largest soybean plant in Kansas, see the best soybean plant in Kansas, arguably, and check out some really cool things about agronomy and what they do in that department.
Absolutely. And of course, a K-State favorite, Call Haw. I think we'd be remiss and devastated if we didn't talk about that today. Obviously, our friends in food science will be there, as well as dairy and poultry, and they're going to have some fun events going on there as well.
Checking out Call Hall is a must during open house. Obviously, you need to go stop by, get your Purple Pride ice cream, but even more than that, we have educational displays in Call Hall as well. If you want to learn about food science, I highly recommend stopping by Call Hall. This year, they're going to do make your own boba, so people are going to get the chance to actually make their own tapioca pearls that they will then try out in some milk tea. I did it last year, and it's easier than you think.
Awesome. That's fun. Another place to get fed is the North Grain Science Complex. I understand they're going to be doing some fun food stuff there as well.
Yeah, so just north of campus, actually there will be an ATA bus route going there. So if you don't want to drive, you can take the free bus right to the North Grain Science Complex. If you decide to do that and visit the North Grain Science Complex, there's a couple different things you can do. They will be offering free lunch. I believe that's going on from 11 to 1. On top of that, they will have tours of the feed mill and flour mill. So if you want to learn about some of our most unique majors in the College of Agriculture and get the chance to explore those opportunities, I highly recommend going to the feed mill and flour mill. On top of that, you can actually create your own corn puff and learn about extrusion in the extrusion lab that's also located in that area.
Yeah, very unique learning opportunity there with those students. So that'll be a great thing to do. And of course, Weber Hall is going to be home to the Little American Royal, which I will actually be talking about with some students in tomorrow's show. So that'll be something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, Little American Royal is one of the coolest events that happens during open house. So definitely recommend stopping by and seeing our students compete.
Yeah, and some meat lab tours as well.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Meat lab tours, it's a neat chance to experience our USDA-inspected meat facility that we have right here on campus that students actually get to utilize for their classes.
Absolutely. Well, so many diverse opportunities to see hands-on what K-State's College of Ag offers.
100%. I think that's really the goal of Open House, is to open people's eyes to the opportunities and experiences that you can have as a K-State student. I know a lot of people come to me every single day and they say, wow, bakery science, I'd never even heard of that. Or some people even don't know the opportunities available to animal science students. So it's neat to get to give people the chance to explore a little bit more about what we do right on campus.
Sure. And with all of that being said, Mikey, I know that you have a lot to do with recruitment that goes on here in the College of Ag at K-State. So if listeners are tuning in and they're looking to learn more, maybe they have prospective students in their own family, where can they do that at?
Yeah, certainly reach out to us and reach out to our office in Ag Academic Programs. You can check out the K-State Ag website. It's ag.ksu.edu. From there, you can find our contact information, a little bit more about our programs. You can schedule an Ag Experience Day, anything like that. But if you want to reach out to us directly, we are always reachable via email. That is kstateag@ksu.edu. You can also call us on the office phone. You can ask for Mikey. That's going to be 785-532-5736.
Wonderful. Well, lots of great resources there that I'll be sure to link to in today's show notes, which as always can be found on agtoday.net. But Mikey, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Samantha.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing all of you tuning in at K-State's Open House, again taking place April 1st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Once again, everyone, that was Mikey Hughes. She's the coordinator of recruitment and events at K-State University in the College of Agriculture. Before we cut to a short break, a quick word from Scarlett Hagans with the Kansas Livestock Association.
In order to balance the use of prescribed fire in the Flint Hills with the need for clean air in downwind communities, those planning to burn should familiarize themselves with the smoke management plan. The success of this voluntary approach is important to preventing government regulation of burning. Tools accessible on ksfire.org and the Kansas Flint Hill Smoke Management page on Facebook can help make burn time decisions that minimize smoke impact on urban areas. Among key elements available for use are 2 forecast models on the website. The cumulative fire impact map predicts potential smoke contributions from each county to air quality in urban areas. The second model shows the direction and extent of the predicted smoke plume from a single burn based on variables provided by the user. An animated map displays smoke movement over the next 48 hours based on burn location, number of acres, and the estimated fuel load. Weather conditions also are provided to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of a planned prescribed burn. Last year, nearly 2.1 million acres were burned in 17 Kansas counties that make up the Kansas Flint Hills. This was up from 1.9 million acres in 2021. I'm Scarlett Hagans.
We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are ending today's show with this week's wildlife segment, and joining us for that this week is K-State wildlife specialist Drew Ricketts. So today's conversation is going to center around mountain lions, which have more of a history in the state of Kansas than I even realized.
Yeah, before European settlers sort of conquered the West, we had mountain lions and gray wolves and black bears and even grizzly bears that roamed the plains and would have occupied Kansas at one time.
You were telling me before that the background of this is there was an effort whenever we started occupying this land to kind of eradicate these animals from the region.
You know, early on when we settled the plains, all of these large predators were sort of seen as a barrier to agricultural production, and more specifically producing cattle and sheep on range lands. So around the turn of the 20th century, around 1900, and from that period on up until about World War II, there were some pretty intense predator control programs throughout the plains and throughout the West. The mountain lions were one of those species that was eradicated. The last sort of historical mountain lion was killed in Ellis County in about 1905, if I have my dates correct.
As of the last 20 years or so, we've been starting to see more active sightings of mountain lions in Kansas.
Yeah, that's correct. And it goes back farther than that. I remember growing up in southeast Kansas in the 90s, there were lots of folks who were starting to talk about seeing mountain lions. Of course, none of those sightings were confirmed. And that's why we're talking about since 2007, which is when the first modern mountain lion was confirmed to be in Kansas, down around Pratt in south central Kansas. Since then, there have been about 50 confirmed sightings of mountain lions in Kansas. And when we talk about this, it's important to remember when we're dealing with a species like this that's so interesting to people, we have to confirm things based on strong evidence. So that would be a track, hair, or a picture of a mountain lion that got reported to a wildlife official and then was confirmed by a wildlife official.
So in the last 3 years of those last, however many since 2007, 3 years or so, we've spotted half of those detected mountain lions. So 25 or so?
Yeah, that's correct. And included in that are 15 confirmations from 2020. During that year, based on the distribution of pictures in Kansas and also the timing of those pictures, we think we had 3 cats moving through the state. And so most of those 15 pictures would have been of those 3 cats.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great to pinpoint because, 50 sightings doesn't mean 50 different individual animals in these cases. I think that would raise a bit more alarm.
That's very true. And one of the interesting things is these animals are mostly coming from the north and west. And when they come into the northern part of the state, they tend to sort of move through the state along the big drainages. So if we think about the Republican River or the Cottonwood River, the Smoky Hills River, these are the big drainages that they're moving from northwest to east and then coming down through like the Flint Hills toward the southeast and that sort of thing.
Sure. So these animals that we're seeing, are they lone animals? These aren't like active breeding populations?
That's correct. That's another very important thing about these mountain lions. So we've got populations that have been protected since those predator control programs, and we've seen those populations recover. What we're seeing now is animals dispersing out of those populations. So these are younger mountain lions that are getting kicked out of mom and dad's home range, or really mom's home range, and then they go looking for good habitat with another mountain lion that could be a potential mate. And they're not finding another mountain lion in Kansas because we don't have a breeding population of mountain lions here. We have these transient individuals that are moving through and they don't find another mountain lion, and so they don't stay put. They keep on going.
So that explains why maybe our numbers aren't consistent. We see maybe more in one year than we do others, per se.
That's exactly right. If mountain lions have a good year in the Black Hills of South Dakota, then we're a lot more likely to see mountain lions in Kansas in the next probably year and a half or so.
Mountain lions aren't an issue that Kansans should be worried about then currently. It's just something to be aware of, I guess.
It is. It's something to be aware of. And there's a really good article that one of our news outlets here in Kansas put out that links some really good information about what you could do if you had an encounter with a mountain lion that was aggressive, but that's extremely unlikely to occur to anybody in Kansas.
Well, Drew, I can't thank you enough for joining us today on this conversation on mountain lions. Thanks so much for all the insight you've shared.
Of course. I'm glad to be here, Samantha.
That was K-State Wildlife Specialist Drew Ricketts joining us for our wildlife segment for this week on mountain lions. That concludes today's programming. We'll be back with more tomorrow on Agriculture Today.